Other way, 2.5.
Why does this look like the NASA launch? Okay, good to go? Okay, great. Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Basalt Town Council work session. We're going to have an informal session from 5 to roughly 6 o'clock. We're going to talk about post BPAC, the Green Deed work plans with Michelle Thibault, our city planner, and then we'll have a little dinner break, and then we'll come back and have the regular meeting at 6 o'clock. So I will remind those that might be listening in that want to call in and provide public comment later on in the meeting. So access to public to the Basalt Town Council meetings can be found at basalt.net under Agendas and Minutes tab, and click on the October 11th meeting packet to open. On the meeting access instruction page, click on the link Join the Webinar, and our town clerk will recognize you. So for those of you that want to get on and join us virtually, that's good. So with that, Michelle, Master of Ceremonies here.
All right. Well, I'm going to wait for James to pull my presentation up after they get the Zoom organized. But for the record, I'm Michelle Bonfils-Thibault, Planning Director for Town of Basalt. And I'm going to give you a summary of the Citizen Committee work plans for 2023. Yay. All right. Next slide. So we're going to start with the Parks, Open Space, and Trails Committee, also known as POST. And I'd like to acknowledge the citizens who make up this committee. They meet twice a month, and they get a gold star for attendance. It's Jason Groves, Julie Kolar, Paul Hiltz, Amy B., Reed Howie, and Sarah Shaw. The work plan is broken up into 4 main components: parks, partnerships, maintenance, and trails. We'll go to the next slide. And so this is a slide that shows you kind of the main topics here. We're going to focus down on the right-hand corner at partnerships for a quick moment. The town is fortunate to have support and assistance from Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers for many of our maintenance projects and trail building projects. The Mid-Valley Trails Commission, who's providing funding support and resources for some of our projects, including the goal of building a trail from Lake Christine to El Jebel. And so with that, we'll go to the next slide. The post-2013 master plan is about 90% implemented, so it's about 10 years old now. And a few of the remaining items to finish it out are upgrades to Albany Park, upgrades to Few Skate Park, and then a couple of maintenance items, including Cliffs Hillside Park, which is pictured there in the middle, and some maintenance to DeRocks Park. And of course, the completion of the Basalt River Park across the street. And then we'll go to the next slide. As implementation of the 2013 plan is wrapping up, POST has been cautious about creating new projects for 2023. They're looking for an understanding of how the town's financial and workforce what our capacity is to maintain our existing assets and our new assets that are online. So we'll begin a process of studying the age and condition and community expectations for our existing parks and trails coming up. On a lighter note, there's also interest in creating a comprehensive wayfinding plan to connect our existing trails and assets. As we all know, our existing trail signage is limited in information, and we're looking at doing something a little bit bolder with a little more information about distance and timing based on travel. And on this slide are just a couple of examples of where that could go. And then lastly, POST is interested in trails work. They're committed to the Midland Avenue Streetscape project, the Willets Lane planning project, as there are many parks and trail connections to be made there. And that'll start in 2023, as well as the 7-Eleven connection, the bridge connection to the school campus, and that's the picture on the bottom right. they've set aside and requested, I think, $25,000 to really improve that connection. Yep, I'm just breezing through this, so I'll stop at the end of post, and if you have certain questions, you can try me. So that's kind of the overview for post, and I'll pause there if there are any specific questions, because these are all kind of big.
Do you want to take questions on post before you go on?
I think so.
Okay. I've got one or two, but I'm not hog with. I'm really curious. Well, I certainly probably can't answer it this afternoon, but I have great curiosity about the status of the Cerise Open Space project, through Pittman County Trails and Open Space. And my understanding is that the conservation easement on Cerise Ranch is in place for that portion of the ranch which is south of the Rio Grande Trail. So obviously visually really important. But there's another piece of it that is supposed to go under conservation easement that's on the north side of the trail, which would be east of the Stotts Mill. And that's been sort of hanging out there, and I just wonder if anybody knows or has any kind of sense about what the timetable on that may be or where it stands. I think there was some confusion with the title to the Archdiocese of Denver or something like that, but it'd be good to get an update on that, see where we are, and if there's anything we can help to kind of facilitate the completion of that
Okay.
idea.
Yep, we can research that.
Yeah. So we don't know what's going on with it. Yeah,
Not at this moment.
strictly a county deal. Okay.
Can I just make a general comment? Thank you to everybody who sits on post for the work that you do, first of all. And I just wanted to say that recently I was at the base of the Light Hill Trail. I did not realize that that is Pitkin County open space maintained, and a ranger approached me because my dog was not on a leash. So for everybody out there, just so you know, that is a leashed dog area. But on the flip side, there is now a doggy waste station, which I'm so thankful for. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That's great.
That's great. And Post has had a pretty hands-on involvement in the design for the band shell and review of the park plans as we've come along. They've had pretty much hands-on participation.
They have.
Yeah.
It's a little bit before my time, so it's a little funny for me to comment on that, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I would just like to comment, I think the taking scale or taking track, however you put it, of what we have, how we're gonna maintain, I think that's super great going forward to try to not get over our skis and do too much with what we have and overextend our staff. So I commend Post for doing that. Really
Great.
encouraging.
Thank you.
Everyone needs to kind of pump the brakes here for a second, just reset our normal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And then just on the skate park, is that just redoing the ramps? Is it, like, no chance we're putting in like concrete stuff or, I've had some requests from some people, so I just didn't.
Well, I'll let you answer because you've had the direct contact
Sure.
with the users.
Yeah, so it's the only skate park in the valley that's not concrete.
Yeah.
It's light material. It's like a wood material for anybody listening. And the users that attend our park specifically seek it out for that decking,
Oh, cool.
since it's not concrete. So I thought the same thing. Why aren't we doing something else there? But we have a couple of issues there. Obviously, it's in floodplain since it's next to the river, so we can't excavate there. And so the skate light material makes sense in that location. It's the structures and the surfacing have lived past their life cycle, which is why it's in need of repair this time. So
So it's redoing the skate light, and is it rebuilding everything or just mostly the surface?
pretty close to everything.
Oh, wow.
The structures are aged and starting to fail.
There might be some grant out there from that,
Mhm.
for that stuff. Skateboard companies, different nonprofits look into.
That's a good
We
idea.
were, today, Public Works is trying to patch together some of the ramps, and there was just a lot of rot. Not on the surface, but underneath. And so They're gonna repair it for the winter, just to kind of get it through. And then, last year, we did replace a couple of the features that are more, not the ramps, but kind of things that are on the ground for grinding and, you know, those kind of things. And they, it looks like what we're gonna go to, the sort of substructure, is a little, it'll probably stand the test of time a little bit better than just wood. I think
Like a
there's some
Trex
actual
or a-
metal or something underneath, and then,
Okay.
and then we can screw that skate light into it directly, and it'll just last longer.
Is there going to be any redesign to it, or is it just kind of redo what's there, already there? Not that I go in there and have a preference, I'm just
It's
curious.
time, David. You need to get your skateboard or scooter head over.
I think it's mostly the same, like replacement.
It's mostly the same with a couple of additional ramps that make sense, the way ramps flow and things grind on go.
Okay,
So, yeah.
cool.
The Swinging Bridge Park, is that just the north side of or include the south side connection to the tree school?
It's mainly the south side connection to the elementary school.
Cool, just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
All right, super. All right. Next up is the Basalt Public Arts Commission. And this group is similarly committed to participating in the Midland Streetscape Project and Willits Lane Plan. At a recent meeting, I appreciated one of the commissioners' comment of finding opportunities to create unexpected delights and whimsy along Willits Lane. So that's kind of a neat idea to happen there as it's going on. In recent meetings, BPAC has been brainstorming ways that the arts can support businesses in the historic district while Midland Avenue is under construction next year, including performing arts opportunities to promote patronage in the historic district. They're also funding what are basically annual programs, murals and sculptures, the BPAC grants, and we're looking to create a master plan for the arts coming up as well. Next slide. Our BPAC committee includes Liz Bell, Karen Andrade, who's here, Anna Lohr, and Britt White right now. And obviously that's a picture of Telluride, but it's kind of inspiring about what could happen in the future at the River Park. And that is the short and sweet part of BPAC, so please ask questions. If you have any.
So what's the state of play with our murals and what's going on there from a design and layout? What's the state of play there?
Yeah, so we've had some interest and some requests, but nothing formalized yet as far as timing. And we are looking at figuring out an RFP if we can line up a couple of the mural locations in a similar time frame to have those completed. So,
Is the big retaining wall in back of Maud's in play? Is that a possibility? We looked at that.
we haven't heard about that, but that's an interesting idea.
It looks like it's kind of a canvas. That's kind of like ready to go. Perfect. Big canvas.
When will
Right.
the arts master plan be completed? What's the timeline for that?
I would anticipate that that would be completed next year, but we haven't mapped out anything more, just that we need to do one. So, all right, super. All right, last but not least is the green team. And the voting members on the green team are Doug McDonald, who's here in the audience, Mike Steiner, Charlie Eckert, and Eileen Fagan. The green team also has a handful of non-voting attendees who regularly contribute to our conversations. And the green team's work plan is focused into 4 sections: tracking goals, public education, transportation, and the built environment. You can go to the next slide, thank you. Tracking emissions and making attainable goals has been discussed. We know the methodology for tracking greenhouse gas emissions has evolved significantly in the past decade, and there's just a need to evaluate and identify measurement techniques that are consistent throughout Colorado, so we're all discussing our measurements in the same language. Public education is also a priority for the green team. We know there are a multitude of rebates, waste reduction strategies, cost-saving techniques that our community could be better enjoying. And if we can make a plan to create all of this information in one space and simplified information so that everyone can navigate that easily, is one of the goals. Also on this slide are pictures, of course, of the solar capital plan and partnership with the school district. Next slide, please. Alternative transportation has been identified as a high priority for the green team to reach our climate goals. They're also committed to the Midland Streetscape project and the Willits Lane planning as opportunities to further promote alternative transportation. The green team is supportive and recommending what's basically becoming a statewide movement to provide e-bike rebates to citizens. And then, I think that's the last one. And then lastly, built environment standards. The green team continues to support the core programs, and we'll be adopting the 2021 IECC before the end of this year. And that's the short and sweet of it, and I can take your questions for the green team.
Really interested in the e-bike rebates. So I've got a specialized 100% carbon hydraulic disc brakes. The price tag was close to the cost of our first house. I'm wondering, I'd love to get a rebate for that bike.
You're gonna get
I'm gonna get
Too late
pennies
now.
on the dollar, my friend.
Too late.
Good luck.
I guess that's not what they really had.
That'll cover your break.
Not quite.
You don't need like a, 24-pound carbon bike.
They're a little heavier than that these days.
That's too bad.
Just convert it.
So for the tracking of GHG emissions, do we have a state we're using? Are we looking at ICLEI, musically tracking software? I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, CORE has helped us track it in the past, but that's kind of been a topic of discussion of what is the standard throughout Colorado that everyone's using, because each community is using different measurement techniques, and so it's hard to compare if we're reducing our emissions by 20%, is that the same 20% that Carbondale is or that Glenwood is? We're all a little bit different right now, so working on that kind of at a regional level.
How's the airport being allocated? Do you know?
I don't know, but we can find out.
Is the green team pretty aware of our net zero resolution and the building code amendments, 25% renewable on-site steps forward? I'm sure they were the originators, so they must know.
Yeah, they're very involved, and I think that's one of the reasons that the education and the public campaign is so important, is that it's difficult to navigate. Even among the green team members who are very familiar with all of the programs, there's a need to simplify it and make it more accessible to the average citizen, so you don't have to navigate all of these different applications.
I'd love to see a investigation maybe into electric charging stations for multifamily buildings. I had the conversation recently that it seems like there's a lot of rebates and incentives for all electric vehicles, but if you live somewhere where you don't have a garage and you can't plug in, that's not really an option.
Point.
I'd love to have some dialogue with the green team about the potential for expanded micro hydro opportunities in Basalt and the Mid-Valley generally.
Okay.
And I have a little presentation that I brutally edited down to 45 minutes, but 72 slides explain the project. I can.
We'll sit
do
all
5
right.
minutes.
Just kidding. Okay.
And we forgot to say thank you to BPAC for all that you do, and to the Green Team. We really appreciate all the volunteer work, and I don't think we don't say that enough.
Yeah, we've got a great citizen committee.
Yeah, I think my last slide is a general thank you to each of the committees. Yay.
Oh, you didn't
Can
go?
you,
Oh, you go.
Go ahead.
Oh, after you.
I was gonna say, before we wrap up, can you just touch on which committees are fully staffed and which could use some folks, so
Mhm.
that can go out to the public, hopefully?
So every committee can use more members.
You don't say.
So each committee, I think, is generally 7 members. I think there'll be one committee that allows for 9, but they're generally 7 members. Post currently has 6, so they're the best, the most well-staffed right now. I think Green Team is at 4, and BPAC is at 4, about to be 5. You'll be introduced to a hopeful new member at the next October meeting. I don't want to jinx it, but I did have a really good meeting with a young professional today, and she's interested in, has other young professionals. There appears to be a migration from Aspen that are interested in joining some of our citizen committees, so fingers crossed on that.
And Bach.
Yes, we have 4 openings on Bach. We have just a forum by the hair of our chinny chin chin.
I would love to see Bach staffed up as we sort of had previous conversations over development applications of changes that need to be considered, or new ideas, new fresh strategies for tackling our housing issues.
Mhm.
Second in the works, thinking how we're gonna create referral process for affordable housing questions and land use applications.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about how to best address that, and of course, in the work plan, we have some of what Elise just talked about. Looking forward to next year, but those are substantive topics. So how to utilize that committee or other committees, like the planning commission, to really bolster that conversation. So we're thinking about it, and we'll bring it back to us.
And then planning and zoning was, you did have a slide in our thing, but then.
I did, and I didn't include in this presentation because they're didn't have a straight linear path to what they wanted to see. They had some general ideas, but there wasn't a unanimous direction there. So those are things that we'll bring back as we go forward. All right.
Say thank you is the biggest thing. Thanks all the volunteers.
Yeah, thanks for all the thought and hard work.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you guys.
Much
you.
appreciated.
What you do for this little town. Great stuff.
Bill, I just texted Gary to see if we can get an answer on the Cerise.
If what?
On the Cerise, Rich.
Yeah.
I texted Gary.
Oh, okay.
He'd be the,
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that guy.
maybe by the time the meeting starts.
Yeah, I just, I do my Friday ride with people, and I wave at it and say, this is open space forever.
Mhm.
And then somebody corrected me one time, I said, well, you should stop waving your hand about right there. The rest over here. So, yeah, I mean, it's an impressive thing to consider when
Thank you.
you leave on a bicycle from Catherine's, Cardale, and you come up past Catherine's store and then into Rock Ranch, and then you encounter the Rock Bottom, and then Salt and Stall, Leisure, and then Billy Grange, and then Cerise. That side of the valley is deed restricted forever. I mean, there are vistas over there that are the same as they were for people living on the train in 1890. It's a stunning, thanks. It's really a remarkable thing to reflect on. It's pretty sensational. So, that's why I'm curious about the archivist piece over there.
Yeah.
See if the puzzle's all put
Yeah, we'll
together.
find out. We'll see.
Yeah,
we
great,
can
thank
get.
you. Okay, you want to take a dinner break here? Do you have more stuff you want to talk about before we?
That was it. I think that kind of sums
Great,
it up
appreciate it.
for us. Yeah.
We're going to do an executive session later.
Yeah,
in
at
the
the end of the
evening.
meeting.
Okay. So, I guess, take a break.
Take a
chow,
break?
Get some dinner,
Take 4.
get back. We may actually even start on time at 6
Yeah,
o'clock. That would be
we'll see, we're having
Exception.
burritos tonight.
I'm sorry, what's the agenda?
Burritos, we're having burritos. Yes.
These are from Jalisco.
So we're free to adopt
Oh,
them.
yeah, they're good.
I actually don't
Jackson
Salt
Hole.
Bike and Ski.
Yeah,
It's a
I know him a
giant
little
mural
bit.
of
I
a
know
mountain
of
biker.
him.
It's like, that's kind of a
Very
sign.
decent, very.
Yeah, I,
Just,
Very good.
Susan and I had started talking about it.
He's got a
years
stamp
ago.
sense, you know, the guy is like.
Actually came up with
Political
the
figure.
Rebates
Can you hear us?
building. Just that.
He's
eat me, eat me.
You can share on it.
That's like a treat, that's something to do early.
Ryan, were your kids scared by our Halloween decorations?
They did not mention it, so I'm guessing no.
Okay, I guess not.
Probably more scared of our ride through the graveyard.
Be the dog park.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Blast off. Okay. Afternoon, everyone. We are in the continuation of the Basalt Council meeting. Completed our work session and reports from Post, Repack, and the Green Team. So we now move to our regularly scheduled meeting, and we'll begin that with a roll call and attendance. Pam, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with David Knight.
Here.
Ellen Cottle.
Present.
Ryan Slack.
Here.
Bill Kane.
Here.
Dieter Schindler.
Here.
Angela Anderson.
Here.
And Glenn Drummond.
Here.
The A team is present, sir.
All right, thank you. So, our first order of business, an agenda which consists of the minutes from September 27th, 2022. I'd ask for a motion to consent agenda.
Mayor, move the town council approve the consent items as presented.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, our agenda is adopted. I'm just going to reiterate that if you're watching and can address council virtually, you don't have to come to town hall. So if you're interested in addressing town council, go to basalt.net and under Agenda Minutes tab, click on the October 11th meeting packet to open, and then you'll see a meeting access instructions page. So you can cancel and take your comments that might be going. So with that, we will have a call to the public. I would ask anyone that's here, public, address council on any topic that is not on the agenda tonight. Please come on up and address council. So anybody on that? Hi.
Mayor and Council, my name is Diana Formansky. I live in Carbondale. You recognize me from our Tuesday nights out. It's been years since I began covering these meetings, and I'm sorry to say that this is my last assignment. This is so done. But don't worry, there will be someone else or another fresh face listening very closely to what you say. But as a veteran journalist, I wanted to make some observations that are probably obvious. In this valley, we have 4 newspapers, print newspapers. 3 of them are owned by a $1 billion out-of-state corporation. One of them is owned by a $1 billion local real estate corporation, which is has an international marketing plan, which we are aware of. And one of the nonprofits is also owned by a $1 billion, not owned by, but contributed heavily by a billionaire out of state. The Soper Sun is homegrown. It is fully written by journalists who live here. It is farm-to-table journalism. It is the only local newspaper. It has no wire service. It has no canned copy. Every issue is fresh. And that's the reason that I wanted to report for a publication like that. I think it's important to keep that in mind because it's a disappearing breed, and the Soper Sun is a nonprofit. I don't say that's better or worse. I do say that all newspapers, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, need to be accountable, just as you are, to the readers. So please keep that in mind as you go forward. Ask questions about where the money is coming from, what is coming, and how much of the newspaper is actually locally written.
Thanks. And appreciate your patience and participation for the last year, so thank you. Anybody call any line like to address council?
It doesn't appear so.
Okay, thanks. So we will then move on to mayor and council comments. Anybody?
I have one, but I'm searching my notes. Somebody else talk.
Oh, go
I would like to say the work that was done, I didn't bring it up in the first meeting, but the work that was on the Swinging Bridge Park looks awesome. I walk every morning. That team did a really great job. I know they're the same guys doing the main, or the new park, and park looks great also. So looking forward to the slide opening. Do we have a timeline on the band show?
Spring.
Okay. How about the sale?
That could go sooner.
Do ribbon cutting for the slide? Goodbye.
Soon, I don't know, but I'm probably waiting until the draft is fully in.
Okay.
If it goes, it's not already.
It's a couple weeks, right? They're putting some additional material down at the base.
Like some rubber probably or things.
Softening and stuff.
No problem.
That's great. Well, I had the pleasure last week representing the town at 2 conferences. One was Moving Mountains, which took place at the Renault Institute next door, and met people far and wide from Honduras, Colombia, Mexico, Nepal, France, and it was really a major international gathering. And the topics of conversation were water resources, land conservation, wildlife protections, and what methods and standards are used. So I had had lunch. I gave a quick talk and had lunch with these folks. It was really a pretty fascinating particular. So hopefully we'll see some proceedings. But they were very complimentary of Basalt, and they seemed to have a good time and stayed here. So the second conference was the hosted by the Aspen Institute, was the United Nations of the Mountains Conference, and I just been on a panel with all the mayors in the valley and county commissioners, and so I did a quick presentation on our building code amendments and the map to net zero, and it was most of the article about climate action and what can be done at a local level. So anyway, they were very fun and very engaging, and I was very pleased to represent the town at those. So anything else?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I just wanted to give a quick update on a couple of things regarding the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, our new name, no longer running for work. We are thrilled to have received a IHOP planning grant from BOLA. IHOP stands for Innovative Housing Opportunities Program. That's what I was digging up.
Not the pancakes?
Not the pancakes, I know. And so we have an RFP out for a consultant to do a regional overview of all of the housing policies and codes that are in place. So if anybody knows housing consultants that might be interested in this, we would love to have recommendations for folks to send this to. And then the other thing I wanted to share is I sat in on a webinar today about the ARPA funding that's going to be available for housing. And two things that were interesting. So the Transformational Affordable Housing Home Ownership and Workforce Housing Grant Program has energy efficiency requirements for any buildings or multifamily rental buildings over 20 units. So I thought that that was really interesting, considering that we have a couple of those coming online, and should they decide to pursue grant funding. And what was the other thing? Oh, so in addition to my previous comment about electric charging stations, that's another thing that they're going to have requirements around for multifamily buildings, is they're going to actually start requiring that some proportion of parking is wired, at least initially, not necessarily with the charging stations, but that it's wired to accommodate charging stations. And I think it was like 70% of parking, so it was like a pretty big number. So all of those details will be firmed up November 15th, so pretty soon here.
Nice. Any other comments, reports? All right. With that, we go to manager report.
Thank you. I do have a few things to report. First and foremost, I wanted to introduce the public and those sitting out in the audience. I know you have all met Doug Pattison, who's our new finance director. He's been on the job for a week and a day at this point. So the honeymoon's over, if you haven't heard me say that yet. Yeah, Doug's been great over the last week, getting him up to speed. He's getting us up to speed on budget stuff, and so I just wanted to welcome him aboard. Good to have you. And a couple other quick updates. I saw today over, as you come off of the roundabout, that we're starting the staging for the fiber project that we have the grant funds for. So that looks like that's going to get started here pretty quickly. The Public Works building at our new location, that slab was poured and the building is now on site. So that should be starting to get put up here in short order, and that'll go up pretty quickly. Kind of that work and the slab work was probably the more time intensive of that project, so good news there. Probably around town you're seeing a lot of blowing out of sprinkler systems. I do get comments of people wondering what the heck that is, so I thought I'd just mention it. It looks like a party in the sprinklers, and so those are getting cleared out. Just they're shallow berry depth and want to prevent freezing during the winter, so that's why we do that. And then just a reminder, we've been having a lot of bear activity in the town, and want to remind people that you need to keep your trash out until the morning of. That also goes for composting, and just try and be cognizant to keep the bears wild. And unfortunately, they have hit some trash cans, so the PD is out doing warnings and in some cases writing tickets if they need to. But we've had such a good track record over the last few years. We're really hoping to keep that going strong and not backsliding on that. So, and then lastly, Saturday night over in Walcott, I presented an award for first responders. We were invited to present the award as we are part of Eagle County, and this particular award was for outstanding efforts by the airport over on the other side, the Eagle County Airport, for that firefighting team. So did that Friday night or Saturday night, and brought my oldest son with me and made him sit through the event. Okay.
One quick question. The fiber made me think about it. Do we have an update on the Highway 82 fiber?
Yeah, I mean, that's plugging along. They should be kind of getting towards the end of that project. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly when they're finishing because I see them still kind of tying in at some of the intersections. It also looks like CDOT is moving forward with putting in some of the infrastructure that they were hoping to, which syncs up the lights.
Okay.
That's the best I can tell of what I'm looking at, because otherwise the developer and the town, the only obligation was to get fiber in, and in some cases just the conduit. So it looks like it's.
Because some of the conduits we cut and capped, and so I figured they're moving on.
Yeah, so for us, where we participated, we wanted shadow conduit just so we had it down that run. So as we look for an open access network, we would have it in place. That's a pretty important run, and then we're going to have open trench. So at any rate, we could ask the engineer to provide a sort of a more detailed update on that. But that's what I know now.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. That completes the manager's report. So now we have 3 presentations. The first is Basalt Connect.
Travis is called in. I think you can unmute and join us, Travis.
Travis, are you there? Can you hear us?
There he is.
There he goes.
There we go.
Travis, if you're talking, we still can't hear you.
Double secret muted.
Really hear we can hear. But
Yeah.
can we turn the,
Hang on just a second, Travis.
Just making sure this is also selected. It is. Differences between these two.
would it be volume on the protector?
Coming through your PA.
Travis, can you speak again, please? I don't know. Travis, can you speak again? I'm sorry.
Is the volume down here, James?
That's
It's
full.
up to 10?
Yep.
Okay.
We may be able to give him a call on the speaker and just have
If we
mute
need to
if
call
that's.
him on the phone, we can do that.
Would you, Travis, if you can hear me, would you just text me your phone number on my cell phone? I'll go grab it and we can call him. I think I might have his phone number on there.
Travis, Ryan's calling into your cell phone. Can you try speaking again, though, to see if
There it is.
we can faintly hear you, but Ryan's going to call.
Their volume issue.
David, you got any new products?
I don't have a dog in this fight.
You're only Lightroom, strictly Lightroom.
I was having such issues with Microsoft Teams this morning. Couldn't get it to work.
Hey there, is this working?
Yes.
That sounds pretty good. You just have to mute your. All right, try it again. Travis?
Yeah,
There we go.
probably gonna be really.
Yeah,
Yeah, are you? It
Turn
looks
his-
like he's muted though,
just
right?
turn his computer speakers off too. So you just have the audio of the phone line.
Yeah, can you turn your computer speakers off?
Yeah, let me see. How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
That sounded better.
Perfect.
Okay, this works?
Yeah.
There you go.
You guys can hear okay?
Thanks, good job, everybody.
Alright. Yeah, well, Travis Gleason here. I'm one of the co-founders of Downtowner. We are the firm that is providing the Basalt Connect service. So thanks for having me this evening. I'm happy to kind of run through an overview of the service, as well as how we did this past winter and summer, and then looking forward into potentially a year 2 program, what the budget options kind of are looking like there, and answer any questions. So I can just kind of get right into it, unless there are other questions right off the bat.
No, that sounds good. Thanks, Travis.
Okay, great. Do you want me to share my screen here, or do you have the pack that I sent over to make sure everyone can see that?
We have it. It might be nice to share for benefit of the public if you're able to do that. Would we be able to pin it,
Go ahead and
James,
do
so
that.
it's big? We can see it.
How does this look? Does that look all right on your end?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, here's just a brief overview of what the service is, for those who might not know. So Basalt Connect launched this past February, and it's a free on-demand service, basically helping people connect to raft the service, as well as just move around the community. You can see our service area down here. It consists of 2 zones. We kind of have Old Town area here, and the neighborhoods just surrounding the downtown area. And then we have kind of the Willits zone, if you will. And so, anyone who wants to ride within each zone and between the zones, you're able to just download our app, Basalt Connect, and request rides on demand. And a vehicle will come to you. You'll see the vehicle on the way. You'll get notifications. You can also call our number as well if you'd prefer to call in for your ride request instead of using the app. So those are the 2 ways you can request a ride. It's a fare free service at the moment. And these are the hours and months that we're operating in year 1. Technically, year 1 goes through December. So we do have kind of some breaks here. We don't operate October, November, and then again have a break in the spring. So we're really focused all of our budget and energy on the winter and the summer months, and the hours of operation for each day, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., kind of getting that commuter workforce, getting them to and from the RAFTA stops. And then from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., that also kind of hits the commuter hours, plus a lot of other things, after school stuff, grocery, shopping, dining, all that kind of stuff. So those were the hours that were available throughout the whole, first year pilot. We also did 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. On Saturdays and Sundays during the summer. So we wanted to have service available all day long during the summer, so we were able to squeeze that in as well. So those were the hours and the general overview of the service. Are there any questions on the service in general before we move on?
Can you remind us why we don't have January?
Just because it didn't start until February.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, what was it?
It'll happen next year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, she was asking about why we didn't have January, and we were initially going to start in January, but then we got delayed, so we kicked it to February and just had those 3 continuous months.
Yeah, exactly. So originally what we were planning to do was January, February, and March, and then no service April to May, take back summer, June through September, and then no service October, November, and then kind of go that way. So we had to swap a few months there because we got delayed until early February. So this next slide here, what we're looking at, can you guys still see the screen?
Yep. We can.
Okay, great. So just a brief overview of winter and summer service. So as I mentioned, early February is when the service launched for the very first time. And just showing kind of the ramp up of ridership here throughout the months that we were operating for the winter time. 7-minute average wait time, about 5,000 passengers. And we also wanted to include here the number of passengers that requested rides to or from RAFTA stops. So we included that there. Thought that was a good stat to look at. And then we have the demand throughout the day. So again, service runs 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then there's a gap in the middle of the day, and then 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. So, kind of focusing in on the most critical hours of the day. So, same thing with the summer. A little bit longer of a period. Obviously, we have June through September, and total passengers, close to 10,000 there. So we did see a nice increase throughout the summer. Obviously, it's not ideal to have these, breaks throughout the year. Continuous service would be optimal, I think, in terms of, growing ridership. We have, 4 months of service, and then, people have to figure out a new way to move around for a couple of months and then starting back up. So you can kind of see here that we, grew ridership, throughout the winter time, and then we had 2 months a month of no service in May, and then started back up in June. And, obviously you can see here that we kind of had to work on our way back up in terms of ridership, people finding out, oh, it's back on again, the service is available again. So moving forward, just something to keep in mind, definitely ideal to operate year-round, I think, but obviously, after a few weeks, people did, get back into the swing of using the service, and, we had a really strong finish to the summer. So that was great to see, and again, we've got our ridership to and from RAFTA stops shown here as well, so some good ridership there. And then some heat maps just kind of giving you an idea of of where people are getting picked up and dropped off. So obviously the commercial centers, grocery stores were really big. So you kind of see those hot spots near grocery stores, shopping areas, things like that. And then obviously the RAFTA stops, especially the BRT stop right there in Basalt, was a really big one for us. So you can see all those here. And moving on to the next slide. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight. Number one was just showing the September stats. So this is for the month of September. So you can take a look through some of those stats. We provided monthly reporting, and it included lots of good data. So you can peruse that. I won't go through each stat
on the previous slide
right now. Some rider feedback that I think it's important, obviously, to collect rider feedback and to show you guys that feedback. So we had a ton of great, great comments to show. We collected a few here, just showing how people are using it, how much they're enjoying the service. And then I did want to include one that was a response when we sent out the email letting riders know at the end of September that service, is suspended for October and November, and then we'll be back December 1st. We did get a number of responses kind of like this where people were saying, hey, we count on this every day and we don't really have an off season. So there was a lot of that type of feedback. So I did want to pass that along. A lot of good stuff, and then obviously people just, wanting year-round service, which is understandable, but we're working within, the budget that's available and trying to maximize that budget, and that's why we picked the hours and the months of service that we did for this year one.
Hey, Travis, let me interrupt. We had a question on, actually it's on the previous slide, David.
It's just an observation, and it kind of ties into that last comment around year-round service. We started a month late, so it went February through April, and I think the upshot of that is that we got to see April ridership, which on that previous slide didn't look a whole lot different than February or March. So That may indicate that that demand for consistent ridership year-round in fact exists, and
Yeah.
we should take that into consideration, just an observation.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, sorry,
Sorry.
I didn't quite catch some of that, but the audio is a little low coming
We'll
from,
discuss
I
that
think,
at the
that
end
side of
of
the room.
at the end of the presentation.
You can keep
Okay.
going, Travis.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, Ryan, I can hear you very well. Everybody else is a little low, but I'll just continue on. And, these are just some budget options to consider for year two. Option one is very similar to year one, focusing on, here's the winter hours, the summer hours. The one thing that we did look at changing for year two in this scenario would be that the ridership in the 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. hour was pretty low comparatively, and we did get a lot of people saying that 9 a.m. would be more useful to them, and so we would recommend kind of moving that hour later. So instead of running from 6 to 9 in the morning, running 7 to 10, and I think we'll be able to get a little bit more ridership out of the 9 to 10 versus the 6 to 7. So that was something that we noticed, and we did hear some feedback on. And what that also allows us to do is from on the weekends during the summer, running from 7 to 10 versus 6 to 10. Obviously, there's an hour kind of savings there in the budget. So that did help us just a little bit in the year two budget. So that's one area that we would make a change, or we recommend a change. The option number two, this would be running our hours of 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. to 10 p.m., running that daily throughout the whole year. So again, kind of making that change from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., making the adjustment from that to 7 to 10 in the morning, but then running year-round. This is what the cost would look like to do that. And then option three would be, running 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily year-round. So that would be, kind of the other end of the spectrum. So anyway, these were the options that we put together. Obviously, there's a number of other options that we could put together with your direction, but these were three, kind of more obvious options to look at, just to give you some ballpark ideas on things. So happy to answer questions, and that's kind of the end of this slide.
I don't have a question. I do have a comment. So I serve on the RAFTA board, and this presentation was made to our board of directors at RAFTA, and the RAFTA staff put together their own analysis of our system, and the net of it was that they showed a graph that indicated that our total system cost per ride was less than $20, which is apparently unheard of in public transportation, unbelievably efficient, and they were way behind it. So this system has gotten a lot of support at a staff level from RAFTA, and I think the feeling there is that we're on a good track here to provide public transportation in a very efficient manner here. So that was all went well.
I have a question. For the option where you reduced the hours from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. on weekends, I'm curious what the rationale was of not going to 8 a.m. because looking at the graph here, it appears that that's when the ridership actually increases on the weekends.
Sorry, what was the question? Can you repeat it one more time?
So it looked like, I'll repeat it just so it sounds like you can hear me pretty well. Were you speaking to specifically?
Well, I wasn't really referring to a specific option, such as just looking at the graph
Just on the
demand
weeks.
for summer service weekends, yeah.
Right. So it seems, I guess what she was asking is, you start the summer service weekend weekends at 7 a.m., but that's a pretty slow time, it appears. So rationale for keeping that versus moving it to 8 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, that would be another option as well, if we wanted to shave off that hour. It was just the consistency, I guess, for option two, keeping the service consistent 7 days a week, with the same start time. That's certainly an option to look at is moving, to a, weekends, maybe you start at, 8, maybe 9, so all those could be looked at for sure.
With a third van too, it would be interesting if we could have an option or like a sub-option to pilot maybe during the day, certain times of year, just to see if there's any demand at all from that 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. time frame. Seems like whenever the thing runs, it seems like there's demand most hours. Maybe there's some hours in there that would be beneficial.
Bill, do you think RAF would?
Yeah, I mean,
Hey, Bill.
I was just gonna say, you can in the summertime, is the only, data that we have for, that middle part of the day. And it's just on the weekends. So, we don't have any data for, Monday through Friday, what it looks like in the middle of the day. But, I would expect that there probably is some ridership there. It just really comes down to budget and prioritizing the hours, I think.
So out of curiosity, do you think RAF would be willing to give us more than what they did last year? Because I'm looking at, if we just bumped this service up, obviously it costs town roughly $85,000 on a 50-50 split. But if we're doing a pilot program and we're wanting to see how effective it is, and granted we got to figure out how to find it in the budget, it makes sense to run it and get some real numbers, because we know that the possibilities of a RAFTA grant after next year probably dwindle. So like a realistic picture might be.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
all I can say is I can ask, and I could make a pitch. My sense is there probably would be some receptivity.
You could really encourage them, hey,
Yeah.
it's less than $20 a rider. Look, they're doing better business than you.
I think that, and I'm not clear on the budgeting process, but each of the jurisdictions in RAFTA have a sales tax reserve. So, we have like a kind of savings account that we have. So any funds left over after our basic contribution go in kind of this little account. So I think we have a positive balance in there, and that may be something that we might want to consider using to beef this up. Because I'm I kind of agree with the trend of the comments here. I think we're seeing that this system is being used for people to get to and from work also. There are numerous employees at the library that use it every day to get back and forth to work. It's true for people that are in Old Town getting out to Woods, they use it when it's available. So they're all vehicle trips that are avoided, so it provides a pretty great service.
I just went to use it this weekend. It was like,
Yeah.
Can I just play the devil's advocate a
Yeah.
little bit on that? Is to
You
come
are
up
the
with
devil,
another
so.
85 grand in our budget, given all that we have been asked to
figure this
figure
out?
out,
So
could be
you're
a
not the
little
devil's
tricky.
advocate, you are actually the devil.
Yeah. I am. It doesn't come without cutting elsewhere, I would just say.
and so that's like if RAF is
something
feeling
to
super
consider.
generous to 169,000.
Right. So I put that out there. The other thing is, yes, of course, we want the full service now, but I think also the service that we're providing today provides a good indicator for the demand, and we go to work over this next year to really figure out a more permanent funding source. A year ago we had nothing.
Yeah.
Today we have a lot, and a lot of good data behind it. I think the public would give us some grace to figure it out, and do a more permanent and robust system. So I guess that's just where I would caution, just given all of the all of those things are funded in the budget, and this is a lot. So maybe no harm in asking RAFTA, but, just, that's my
Travis, I have a question. Do you, how deep does the data collected go? I mean, do we know, like, demographic at time of the day uses it? For example, like, is it kids in school? Everything collected in that manner?
So we definitely know where people are going and when they're going. You know, we are somewhat limited. You know, we don't ask people, you know, hey, what's your age or anything like that. So demographic data, we'd be pretty light on that. But if we wanted to know, you know, where are the rides going that, you know, are happening at 8 a.m. or, you know, 5 p.m. or whatever it is, you know, we definitely have all that data. So we just don't ask for some of those other, you know, demographic type things, which we could in the future if we wanted to. You know, we could do some more surveys. We can do that through email surveys. We can do that through in-app surveys. You know, there are some other ways to start asking for some of that data, so we can start filling in some of those blanks. It's just not something that we started with, but it's certainly something we can add.
I just feel like that would round out data quite a bit if you're really analyzing, you know, usage and who's going when. And that might kind of fill in the blanks of the periods where we're just not running it.
On the summer pickup map, sorry, it looks like there is a hot spot, but I can't tell if it's the Habitat Basalt Vista or whether it's the high school. Do you know? I'm just curious. Doesn't it?
I'd say that's Basalt Vista.
Because nobody's at the high school, right?
It
So,
just looks behind the high school.
and we did add the high school, or we did add Basalt Vista. Yeah. I think that's,
It is Basalt Vista.
I would say I was looking at that.
Yeah, you're talking about this one up here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the high school.
Did we add the schools? I know people were using the car wash and locations close
yeah, no,
by.
we did not add this one, because we don't want them going onto the campus, but I mean, some kids do just, which is fine, you know, you just pick up elsewhere.
Right.
But-
Travis, do you have information on super users? Because if there's 908 total unique riders and 14,000 rides, are there 100 people that are taking 50 rides each?
Yeah.
Which is fine, which is great. I just would wonder.
We have that. So if we're interested in knowing kind of a breakdown of where the ridership's coming from, is it, you know, how many people are taking 10 rides, how many people are taking 20 rides, how many people are taking 30 rides or more, that kind of thing. I can surface that data for sure.
Yeah, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Can you also provide us with the phone number? I didn't realize that you could actually call and not use the app, because we've had some folks request, like, for example, at Stubby's to go to the bartender and ask them to use their phone to call Basalt Connect, not realizing that there was actually just a plain phone number you could call. You didn't have to actually have the app and a smartphone.
Was your question what is the number, or?
Yes. if
Can you
could
provide the
it.
number?
Yeah, so the phone number, it's actually in the app. You know, if you go to the menu of Basalt Connect, you'll see it there. It says call Basalt Connect, and it's 970-355-1860. So that is an option. I mean, we definitely push people to use the app instead of calling in. It's just, you know, you get the push notifications as your drivers are arriving. You know, there's a lot of, you know, extra benefits to using the Rider app. I think the experience is you know, better than calling and then just kind of waiting. But yeah, that number is there for people who would prefer to call. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Travis. All looks promising, and we're going to keep pushing this guy. So
It's pretty neat to be here. Last year, we were talking about kicking it off and not really knowing what the heck to expect. So it's pretty neat to get some of the data and the feedback and be looking at expansion. And so, you know, yeah, that's right.
And real quick too, compliments to you and staff, because your rating is amazing. I mean, 4.95 out of 5 is awesome. So thank you for good hire.
The other anecdotal thing that's gonna happen is that everybody knows the drivers. And they don't say we're calling Basalt Connect, they're calling Jesse. So that's a good thing. I mean, people have a connection here, you know, a personal connection with the system, and they really like it. And I think there's one sort of anticipated benefit is that the system shuts down at 10. So if you have guests at a dinner party like we have had, well, I think it's time for, you know, Jesse's gonna be here in about 5 minutes. So the night's over at 9:45. It's sideboards on the evening, it's pretty good.
One more thought for Travis, as we move forward and hoping funding to continue the service into the future, we would love to start looking at electric vans or some hybrid, some kind of environmentally more climate-friendly solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all not far away. You know, for the most part, its best option is waiting for the electric version of the Ford Transit van, which we're using right now. You know, there are some fully electric options, but the options that are available right now, you're kind of limited on passenger capacity, so you just can't, you know, fill up as many people. And the other limitation right now is just the larger vans are kind of aftermarket vehicles. So there are some companies. There's one out of Denver that we tested a van of theirs, and it's it's similar to what we're using right now. It's just fully electric, but they're aftermarket, so they're pretty pricey to have a larger transit van like vehicle that's fully electric. It's about double the cost for the price tag of the vehicle. So again, it's not quite the offsetting of gas isn't quite there yet because of the price tag of the vehicle. But the Ford Transit, they did just release their cargo version of the van that we're using, and they are going to release a passenger version next year or two. They're, I think, a little behind their projections on timelines. But in the next year or two, I'm pretty sure that vehicle is going to come out, and we're definitely excited to switch over to those bigger vehicles, or all electric vehicles when we can. So it's just a matter of time. So
That's great, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. Good update. With that, Travis, thank you, sir. And
When will we
Okay,
have our
no problem.
internal
I will-
discussion?
I guess I'll hang up then.
yeah.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. Or did you?
Okay.
do you
Have a good night. Bye.
I was just asking, when will we have our internal discussion of which option to move forward with?
I think it'll depend on financing, so
Right.
Bill can bring back some information.
I'll have some intelligence after Thursday, and then it's probably going to be part of the budget discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. So next item is update from Jacob Smith, Colorado Communities for Climate Action with Michelle and Sarah. Come on up, you guys. Jacob, good to see you. Thanks for your patience. You were
So
probably-
exciting.
Got a lot out of that discussion, didn't you? See, it's all climate action. That's all vehicle trips avoided, and, we'll do the calculations on the carbon avoided too. Anyway, welcome, guys.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll just do a brief introduction for the folks at home that might not know what's going on here. So we have Jim Smith here, Executive Director of the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, also known as CC4CA. This is a coalition of local governments throughout the state that advocates for issues related to climate policy. And as we know, the 2020 Basalt Master Plan supports membership and collaboration with environmental groups throughout the region as well as the state. Basalt has been a member of CC4CA since 2017. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jacob. He can give you an idea of an overview of what CC4CA is, efforts to date, current focus, and anything you'd like to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, staff, here. you all have been a member since before I worked for CC4CA, and this is the first time I've actually sat down with the council. I'm really thrilled to thank you for the invitation. And Sarah's amazing to work with, but it's also nice to have a chance to meet all of you as well. So I figured I wrote the slide deck. It's an overview of what CC4CA is, what we do, what we've accomplished over the past year or so, and what we anticipate might be coming up at the legislature and on the regulatory side of things, and then happy to answer any questions you all might have as well. I'll just mention that I started with CC4CA in 2018. The organization started in 2016, so Basalt is one of the earliest members of the coalition. It's grown now to 39 members around the state. 2/3 of those are rural, half of those are West Slope, range in population size from under 1,000 to over 500,000. So it's pretty diverse from a type of community standpoint across the state. And Basalt's just been this amazing stalwart member since the very beginning. I used to be the mayor in Golden. I guess that makes me a recovering politician, but I had the good fortune to circle back to working with local government on climate policy issues, which is what I do for CC4CA and love it, and get to work with folks like you and Sarah and across the coalition. So I guess I just ask you to,
Sure.
yeah, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, that'd be great. CC4CA is a coalition of local governments. We focus almost exclusively on advocacy. We amplify the voices of local governments and local elected officials in policy-making venues like the legislature, the Air Quality Control Commission, the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, places where policy is being made at the state level that impacts all the things that you do at the local level, and certainly impacts your ability to achieve whatever your own sustainability or specifically greenhouse gas emission goals might be. This is true for every local community in the state. The premise was a small handful of jurisdictions that felt like nobody cares when we show up as an individual, and particularly those jurisdictions were like Boulder and Pickens County and Aspen, and places that everybody rolls their eyes when Boulder shows up and says, we want you, state legislature, to do this cool thing or this important thing. And the only person at the legislature who cares what a jurisdiction thinks is the state rep, if you're lucky, that represents you, or the state senator that represents you. But when you can show up and say, I'm representing 39 jurisdictions across the state that collectively represent almost a quarter of the state's population, it has a very different reaction. And that's the dynamic that we leverage on behalf of our members, specifically directed at climate policy. How do we strengthen climate policy, largely at the state level? So the slide, most of what we do is advocacy oriented, and I mentioned the venues that we work in. We do some other work as well, providing some resources to our members, trains and briefings. For example, tomorrow we have a briefing on the IRA and some of the funding opportunities through federal grant programs that are in the works. We do things like that on a regular basis. They're always open to all of our members, and certainly welcome you all to join that or any other. Also, if you have requests or suggestions of things we could do that'd be beneficial to you, happy to figure out how to do those things as well. And then we do a lot of information sharing. We run it through staff because it's a lot, and then you guys can, Sarah can curate it and make sure you're getting stuff that's important, but we don't drown you. But we're also happy to plug you in at whatever level directly you would like to be. So if you want to get our roundup, which is every other week, exhaustive, look at all the things that are happening in the state, all the things we're working on around climate, all the things that are upcoming, happy to plug any of you in at whatever level you would like. Next slide, please. I do want to underscore, this is a list of the membership, so you can see that. I'm going to mention just the relationship I got to meet with the Green Team yesterday, which was great. I'd never met them either. And I wanted to just underscore that it's this really nice compatibility. The Green Team focuses on your work here in Basalt, and our job is remove barriers to what you're trying to do here locally. Our job is to move the levers that are state level levers that local governments don't have control over anyways, like air quality or greenhouse gas emissions rules. It's not something generally local governments can do, but we can leverage all of your voices to make sure that those policies are changing in the right ways at the state level. The coalition has a board of directors, as you would expect. Every jurisdiction has a seat on the board, including you all. And on paper, it sounds insane. It's a nonprofit I answer to a board of 39 people, but it actually works stunningly well. Every jurisdiction to become a member has to pass a resolution now that just expresses support for our policy positions. So it means that to become a member, you are in alignment with what the coalition is trying to do. And that just helps make sure everybody's on the same page as far as policy goals. And then once you're a member, it requires, we can't change the policy statement unless we have the consent of every member. So once every other year now, we go through a process to update the policy statement, figure out are there issues that aren't addressed that should be, or have technologies or policies changed in ways that mean we should make some adjustments, and we don't make them unless every member agrees. So a Basalt can't get outvoted by an Adams County or any dynamic like that. Every single community has the same vote and has veto power over those kinds of changes. Thank you. I will blast through a few slides on the legislative session. I think Sarah's going to share the deck with you afterward, and I'm happy to answer any questions today now as well. I do want to call out a couple of legislative accomplishments. This slide is just an overview. Next one, please. There's a couple of the bigger accomplishments in this last legislative session I want to call out. The air quality investments one that's listed there, it is just a ton of money going to a bunch of parts of the puzzle around air quality, including monitoring and enforcement by the Air Pollution Control Division on emissions at oil and gas drilling sites, and diesel truck funding grants to reduce the pollution that is emitted from diesel trucks. But a bunch of that money is for the kinds of things that you all were just talking about. There's a bunch of money flowing through the state for electrifying buses and other transit vehicles, and school buses is another huge focus there. So I don't know what specific programs might be a good fit for what you were just talking about, but there may be options out there. And then the federal funding as well, a bunch of that is for those kinds of capital investments, and there may be a really good match between some of the federal programs that are slowly coming online and the kinds of opportunities you were talking about before with the vans for the transit program. And then the other I wanted to mention is the top one here, the building code. Building code is a tricky one because local governments are often protective, as you all certainly know, of the state intervening in local affairs. What we've been able to negotiate, and we've done this twice now, is a bill that raises the floor on what building codes need to look like, but still gives local governments unlimited flexibility above that floor. And we did that several years ago, and that was a good start. In this last session, we did it again and built in some additional pieces around electrification, like EV readiness for buildings that will kick in a couple of years, things like that. So it's a good example of where, because we were at the table, we were able to shape those conversations and make sure we're finding a reasonable balance between local control, your ability to make decisions within your jurisdiction, and the ability across the state to make sure we're really moving forward on greenhouse gas emissions. Next one, thank you. We do a ton of regulatory work, and I won't take up your time going through all these, but again, happy to talk about any of those if you have any questions about them. Next one. I won't go through this slide either, but I wanted to include it because it gives you a sense of the level of involvement of elected officials and staff across our membership. It's not a requirement, so we don't expect anybody to testify or write letters to the editor or meet with your legislator, but it's something we make available, and it's a huge part of why we're able to have the impact that we have, because we're actual elected officials, and other representatives of local governments are the ones who are often testifying and meeting with legislators and other policymakers and describing their needs and their opportunities from the local level. And you've been great at when you had opportunities to step up in that way, and very much appreciate that. And want to just make sure you all know that's anytime you are interested in, if there's an issue that's of particular interest to you, or you just want an opportunity to testify at the legislature and we can find a good match for you or any other venue, just let Sarah know and plug in with me and we'll make that happen. And this is just another version of the same one. Those are the kinds of ways that folks across the network engage. A lot of it's through testifying, a lot of it, and most of the testifying now is virtual, which is, even at the legislature, so far they're maintaining that virtual option, which has been incredibly helpful for folks in Western Colorado for sure. And then I'll just say a little bit about what we're seeing, what we think we're seeing coming up. A lot of the activity, well, certainly a lot of activity around both what we now call or what everyone is now calling the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which was passed a year ago, and then now the Inflation Reduction Act. Between those two, there's a ton of money that's flowing. A lot of it will flow to states and then flow to local governments or just directly to state programs, but a lot of it is our grant programs for local governments as well. So like the briefing I mentioned that we have tomorrow, it's a whole series of briefings like that because it's a pretty vast array of programs that local governments might be competitive for. And so that's one place where there's just a lot of activity. And for us, our challenge is to help our members weed through what is a very confusing universe of opportunities and programs that all have different requirements, and curate the ones that are the most promising and just help our members be competitive for those things. The producer responsibility organization, I'll mention that because that was one of the more difficult and sweeping pieces of legislation last session, still this year. That is the bill that creates basically a fee on packaging materials that's applied upstream, so the producers themselves, that's based on the environmental footprint of those materials. And then that money is put into a program that then gets distributed out to local governments across the state to pay for your recycling services, whatever you offer your residents. Or if it's not a service that the jurisdiction itself offers, then that money goes to the residents directly to offset or it offsets their costs. So they're not paying for recycling. The idea is packaging choices have a huge impact, huge environmental cost. Those environmental impacts have always been externalized, and so we end up collectively picking up the cost. And this creates a very clear market mechanism to push producers to use materials that are going to be less impactful from a climate and other environmental footprint kind of standpoint. So that will result in money flowing into your community, whether it goes to you directly or to your constituents. That the idea is everybody in Colorado should have recycling service that is at least as good as their trash service. And then last thing I'll say is a lot of our ability to be a good voice for you and to amplify your voices in all those venues is knowing when you're running into barriers or knowing when you see opportunities that need some kind of state level advocacy. So that's just an invitation. If you, on any of the work you're trying to do here locally, discover that there is a state law or a state regulation or some program that has a guideline in it that is actually causing you problems, that's the kind of thing to let us know, and we'll figure out, is there a way to tackle that? And the same thing, if you see opportunities that are just unrealized because there isn't some kind of a structure at the state level, that's the kind of thing, again, that we look for to try and make your lives easier so you can meet your local goals, and then collectively we can achieve the state level greenhouse gas emission goals. And I'll stop there, happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments, guys?
I would just say thank you so much, and having both been in the world of environmental nonprofits, sitting on boards, working with them over many years in the industry, CC4CA really is one of the best run organizations I have ever encountered. And I think it's really because they have a singular mission, and they don't stray from that mission, and it doesn't get fuzzy. It's like very directed, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Questions, guys?
I guess I just had a question about membership and how, I mean, you're active seeking new membership, and it just, I guess for me, it just, from my perspective, it seems weird it's only a quarter of the population of the state, you see Wheat Ridge on here, but not Jefferson County, right? So what are the hurdles with stuff like that?
That's a great question. One of the things, I didn't point this out on that list of the members, but I'll mention one of the places that we've seen the most growth in the last couple of years or so are really purple jurisdictions, purple communities like Wheat Ridge. North Glen's another good example that historically have been either purple or more conservative in their politics of the impacts of climate on their communities, like the fires that happen up here that then dump sediment into the waterways that all the downstream communities are now stuck paying for water treatment challenges. That shouldn't be the downstream communities. It's not their fault, shouldn't be their problem, but it is. That those kinds of impacts are having very real effects on even purple communities. And so that's just the politics of those communities recognizing that climate change really is a huge impact. So that's one of the trends we've seen. The we're explicitly an advocacy organization. It's sort of like a CML in a sense, except really focused on climate policy. How do we make climate policy at the state, a little bit at the federal level, as strong as possible? And the politics are just not there for a lot of communities. So I think there's a lot of communities, more than our members of CC4CA, that would express support for doing things on climate or have local sustainability plans or goals. But it's another step then to say we are committed to advancing these policy goals at the state level. But I think a lot of those communities that you might be thinking of, we're always in conversations with communities, and most of the ones we're talking to are the purple or more purple ones. And usually it's like 9 months, a year, or 2 years sometimes of conversation before the politics and everything else lines up. So I think we've grown every year since we started. I think that will continue, and hopefully we will be at half of the population in short order.
Thank you. Thank you for your work too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think another aspect of that too is that, the majority of the population of Colorado is in the Denver metro area, but Denver is such a large jurisdiction on their own that they already have their own policy advocates, whereas CC4CA really steps in for smaller communities that don't have that ability.
That's a good point. Great, well, thank you, guys. Appreciate the update. Any other questions? Thanks, Jacob.
Mayor, thank
for
you,
coming
council.
out.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to turn down a trip to Basalt.
There you go.
So the next item up is the first draft of our 2023 budget presentation. We've allotted 7 minutes for this item.
I can talk fast, I can talk loud, but I don't know if I can quite get through it that quickly. So I'm going to more or less take the lead on presenting, and I'll use support from Jenny and from Doug where needed. But I'll just kick off by saying that the point of delivering this today, it's a draft budget. We're required to do so by state law, and I believe in our charter also has us delivering it to the council by October 15th, so we're checking that box. We do plan on coming back for the end of November for a first reading and a second reading, as we typically do at our first meeting in December. So with that said, I'm going to just kind of walk us through these pages, beginning pages quickly. We kind of start off with an organizational structure, having the citizens at top, of course, mayor and council, and then going to staff down below there. The second, you can keep moving there, Jenny. The second few pages here are our budget calendar. So every year we set out a budget calendar to inform council, inform our finance advisory board, and the public as to kind of what are the critical dates as we move through the budget process. And you can see on October 11th here, we had planned to deliver the first draft of the budget to you. The next several pages on here, I actually went through today and did some more updating on this, some formatting and just cleaning up language and such. But this is in its draft form, but it is our work plan. So every year we do a work plan, and we have in the last few years added that into the budget document. So it's sort of a written form of the budget, ends up expressing all of the items in here where it's appropriate are then supported in the budget itself. So it's just a way for us to add some transparency to the process. And for those that don't want to read spreadsheets, you can kind of thumb through the work plan and get a good understanding of what the town is up to. So this will look a lot nicer once we finish it and get it into its final form, as we have in the last few years. So getting into the meat of things here, okay, on this page, this is the summary of all funds. And so this is where we really start getting into the numbers. And I did want to make sure I said thank you to Jenny for all of her work. After Christy left, Jenny picked up and has been doing a ton of work on the budget and getting it to where it is today. She did have some good support from staff. Our process for doing budget is bottom-up approach. You know, we kind of start with department budgets and get those delivered to myself and to the finance director, and then start, you know, compiling. There is a lot of crossover between departments as we go through the budgeting process, but it was Jenny's job this year to really kind of put it all together. Doug in the last week has come and done a lot of checking of the work and the numbers, so that's been really handy and timely for us. So thank you to Jenny for stepping in and also carrying through with all the other duties that she has. One of the things I will mention in this budget is it is a big focus for us on the Basalt Forward 2030 projects. You know, we have support from the citizenry to carry forward with those projects in what was a very decisive vote last year about this time, and you know, it's our responsibility now to make sure we're carrying through with those. So as a reminder, we've got the Midland Avenue Streetscape project, we've got the solar project that we're working on with the school district and Holy Cross Energy, and then also affordable housing. So we're really looking at having an all hands on deck approach, and that was reflective tonight in Michelle's presentation some, where we're really trying to get our committees to put their efforts and focus on this as well. So a few things that I will say about this page with regard to our revenues this next year, specifically in our sales tax. Sales tax is really the bread and butter of the general fund, and what we're looking at projecting into next year for a budget, we have been tracking over the 2022 budget so far this year at a clip of about 17% or so. And we want to cut that back a little bit moving into 2023 to about 14%, and then keep it flat going into next year. So we'll recognize the growth that we've seen this year. Part of our justification for doing that is we are seeing some growth in the community. We are also seeing some stable numbers that are coming through because we're collecting online sales tax as well, so we're capturing any leakage there that used to otherwise not come into the town, and then we're also seeing that, you know, people are still spending. A lot of the sales tax revenue we get come through the purchase of food, and we know that those will you know, still be a necessity moving forward. So we feel pretty strong about where we sit with that. As I've said to all of you, we do have the ability to pivot if, in fact, some, you know, catastrophic economic event comes forward by looking at our some of the capital projects and things like that to delay those, but we're not expecting that we'll see that come to fruition in the next year. Let's see, property tax is stable. That's kind of a year-over-year income that runs about $1 million or so for our general fund, and we're expecting that to come through. One of the things that I want to mention, also coming off a good year, is we are doing a whole lot of investment in the community with regard to capital projects, but also important to invest in our human capital. And so looking at a 6% increase for salaries going into next year, we're still seeing a lot of inflation pressure, and you know, people are just, you know, their dollar's not going as far. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of our small but mighty staff who do a lot of work for us and actually are the ones that, you know, kind of push all of these projects forward. So looking at doing that, and then making a switch on benefits. We did do a survey earlier in the year from our employees, just asking for general feedback on salary, benefits, culture, those types of things. And so the health benefits was one thing that came up, and we then went out to the communities up and down the valley, over into the Eagle River Valley, to understand, sort of how we stacked up. And so looking to make a switch there where we cover about 85% of the cost of our middle health plan for families. So that'll put us a little more in parity with what we're seeing throughout the valley. And not only retaining our employees, but then also recruitment. We did go through a number of recruitments this last year, some for department head level positions, actually 2 of them, and then also, from entry level positions as well. And so we, heard a lot from that and learned a lot. And so I think this will set us onto a good trajectory. A couple of the things, just kind of get into the numbers. This page has our summary of funds for all of the different funds that we have. So the general fund is really the one that we focus on. That's what sort of keeps the lights on for the community and helps pay salaries and those kind of things. It's our operational budget. But then we also have an HOA fund that was a recommendation from the auditor a few years ago because of the units that we own across the way at Gold Rivers Court. Our restricted fund, as a reminder, we broke that out a few years back. We used to commingle all of the funds for the general fund and the restricted funds, and it was really hard to know when it was that way, sort of what's the source of money that we're spending and what are we taking in. So having the restricted fund separated really does allow for greater transparency, not only for the council when you're looking at budgets, but then also for the community. We have a bond fund, so that is sort of money in, money out. The source of that revenue is property tax. That is the source of money that goes to pay off our debt, which in this case is a little bit of remaining debt from an older bond issue, but then moving into the future, the Basalt Forward 2030 projects. And as a sort of complement to that, we created a new fund this last year, which is the Capital Construction Fund. And so that will be reflective of all the costs associated with the projects for Basalt Forward 2030. We'll be able to break that out and kind of show the progress on expenditures as we move forward there. You will note on the total, the expenditures in there, we are programming the majority of the money that we took in for that to give ourselves flexibility if we're able to speed up the progress on Midland Avenue, for example, or we get an opportunity with affordable housing as we look forward into the next year. So those are programmed and allow us to be pretty nimble. And then the last two, briefly, we've got the water fund. That is our only enterprise fund, so that acts like a separate business within the town. And that is wholly supported through our user fees and investment fees, so tap fees that new buildings pay into the fund. And then, excuse me, lastly, the Conservation Trust Fund, which are lottery funds. So that's a pretty standard amount. Every year we get about $25,000. It has to be used on parks maintenance, parks purchase, capital items, things along those lines. One final highlight on this page, our total budgeted expenditures, out of the general fund, we have about $11 million. All told, we're at about $35, $36 million. That $36 million is, of course, reflective of a lot of the capital that we're investing in. You want to go to the next page, Jenny? So just a couple highlights from this page. If you take a look at our revenues across the top, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, but the licenses and permits, our projection for licenses and permits this year is around $840,000. That goes down somewhat significantly next year And a lot of that has to do with our building permit fees. So we had a lot of big buildings come in this year, some finishing out in the Willits area, Stotts Mill, and we're projecting a decrease in those moving into next year. Let's see, one other line item in here, which is the intergovernmental revenue. That is decreasing as well. So this year we had budgeted $726,000, and it's going down to $469,000. But we had taken in 1.6. So a lot of that has to do with that ARPA funding that we received as a grant, a one-time grant. And then I will finish out these revenues with the miscellaneous. So miscellaneous is going way up. So this year we had $11,000 programmed, and our projection for the year is $187,000. And next year we're projecting a somewhat flat at 155, but that's due to interest. So our investments are starting to see an uptick with that raising interest rate. So it's not all bad when interest rates go up. We do see some benefit from that with the conservative investments that we are that we have to make. And then the other piece to that is our severance tax. We got a one-time lump sum severance tax that was, far exceeded what we'd gotten in past years. It was somewhere around $10,000, $11,000 and jumped up, threefold or so. And part of that severance tax is just tied to extraction of oil, gas, metals, and whatnot. So there's been an uptick in that in the state over the last year. And let's see, a couple other things. If you go down to expenditures by department, we did have one sort of rather large increase in the cemetery. Typically the cemetery, we just kind of mow the grass and, things, are pretty standard in there. But we have aging infrastructure in there, so the irrigation system is quite old. It's just not adequate. Our staff is spending a lot of time up there fixing it. And so we have programmed into the budget this year $280,000 to replace the irrigation and some more fencing up there to really make sure that we're keeping that asset in good shape. And then the final thing I'll say on this page with regard to the total expenditures for the general fund, you'll see this year was at about $13.5 million. Next year it's down 11 to 11.2. That difference is really kind of showing us the purchase of that police department land that we did off of Original Road last year. So again, when you have these bigger purchases in a given year, it tends to skew the numbers, but that's really the explanation for that. And then I'll briefly go over the restricted fund. I think I have fewer things to talk about here. The revenues, you can see the taxes up top. Those taxes are largely tied to our post fund. So we've taken the same tact on how we're going to program the revenues for next year, and kept it flat, but recognized some of the growth in sales tax for the year. Let's see, and then down below, the tobacco restricted expenses. So as you all know, we've done a lot of work on that over the last few years. We have obligations for this year, and then just made some new ones that'll last for about 3 years. But it does look like we'll have some money left over. So we've been brainstorming as staff, going to have our recreation director do some more digging with the schools to see what kind of programming might be beneficial for the kids. Also, in particular, looking during those summer months when kids are otherwise not as occupied, and we'll bring those back to you. But I think that program's really grown as far as what benefits we know to the community for some of those We've got a full-time counselor in the elementary school that we pay for, providing financing in the middle school for 2 teachers, and then in the high school for 1 teacher. We helped with some capital investment at the high school this year, the new track, and have the bleacher press box project that will take off next year, as well as some improvements to the weight room. And so all of these things really focused on kids, and kind of, bringing up the self-esteem and really trying to keep them away from tobacco and other substances. So, and then finally, the Hope Center, that's another one of our big investments. They're in the schools. We have a co-response program with them with the PD for crisis, and then they also offer free counseling to community members, and that includes business owners and such, so, or employees. So that, in a nutshell, is sort of where we are with tobacco. But I did want to point out here that the total expenses this year for restricted funding, which is that $6 million number right there, you can see that we do use that restricted funding, and really what that is just an indicator of how we're investing in the community. These restricted funds have proven to be really important for us, to be able to continue, delivering new parks and keeping up with road maintenance and sidewalks and, things that are just, a lot of the basics that we do to provide a high level of service. So this fund generally, and all of its different sources, are important for us.
Ryan, one quick question.
Sure.
On legislative, what does that cover? Lawsuits? Like, why is it?
Oh, expenditures legislative, that's your budget, the town council budget. So that might include some green team expenses in there, things like that. So no, not like legal.
Or exorbitant
salaries. And then these next several pages we'll kind of breeze through, but I want to make you aware of them. We've added to the budget 2 years ago. These are all of the sources of restricted funds that come into the budget, and an explanation of what they can be used for. Most of them, you've seen in the past. I will point out that we have a new one this year. It's a new real estate transfer assessment, and it's associated with the Basalt River Park development. So there's 2% on all sales that occur for the market rate homes in the Basalt River Park, and 1.5% of that, Rita, is set aside for affordable housing. 0.25 is set aside for green projects, and the last 0.25% is set aside for visual arts. So we have programmed some of that already into the budget, but just wanted to make you aware of that.
Brian, I have to ask you a quick question. Under the restricted fund, the total taxes are shown at $4,000,001. How much of that is the 1% open space sales tax for post?
The majority.
Majority,
if not
right
all.
through? Something like that? There's an expenditure?
There's no other.
Yeah, 3-1. 3-1.
Thank you.
And then there's lodging tobacco tax.
Oh,
in
that's
with
right.
that.
So Post is contemplating updating their long-range master plan?
That's right.
Is that underway, or is that?
No, that would be a 2023
It's going to be a
project.
23 project?
Yeah.
That's a substantial project. I mean, that's, when you start leveraging that revenue stream, we can do some very dramatic things in Basalt. So that's one I think we really want to, in coming years, place some emphasis on and get council participation in it too. It's a very big deal for us. So.
Yeah, one of the things to keep in mind is 20% of that goes to maintenance. So one of the deep dives that we're really needing to understand is, it's great, we've brought all these new recreation amenities online. How are we going to take care of them over time? And is that 20% enough to really keep it at a high level? And as we've learned from the park here, from the pool, $3 million sounds like a lot. It is a very generous amount, no doubt, but it doesn't go as far as it used to either. It's just the cost of construction, and parks equipment is very expensive. So while at face value, it's high and we can do a lot of neat things, we'll make sure we're just understanding and tailoring a master plan to be realistic with that revenue source. So any other questions on that?
No, I just, it just jumps out as a major revenue source for us, and that, if you apply, even with discounts for maintenance and everything else, the net proceed on any kind of normal sort of leveraging kind of assumption is a big sum of money.
Yeah.
And it's, it rivals Basalt 2030 in itself, just its own program for
It does.
kind of what we want to be and where we want to go. There's some, and I think we all have our own ideas about what great uses for that money.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely.
Great.
Great, no, thank you. Okay, so yeah, Jenny's page here. So this page here still needs a little bit of updating off to the right, but we do in the notes provide, just for added clarity, what we intend and where we're programming the various funding sources. One of the ones that I would point out in here is down toward the bottom, the lodging tax here. So that this year, we are looking, moving forward at implementing a program to be able to understand how many short-term rentals we have. So we've done some research and gotten bids from companies that provide a service of keeping track of your short-term rentals. We know that we have more short-term rentals than we have people that have come forward and gotten licenses for them. Part of it is a public safety issue. They get inspected to make sure smoke alarms, carbon monoxide alarms, fire extinguishers, those basic life safety things are in place. And the other piece is, they are supposed to be paying lodging tax, sales tax, and they're competing with our local lodges. And so we want to make sure we create a level playing field there, and for you all to get a better handle on how many of these things do we have. Do our current policies make sense for us? Maybe they do. Or are we seeing a trend where maybe you want to have some conversation about it in the next year? But a few of the expenditures coming out of there, we are looking at doing some programming over in the new river park. In particular, we want to make sure to get a splash out there this year because it's a new park, but then also we'll be under construction on Midland. If we can try to get some people into the downtown area and really program that, hopefully help support the businesses that might be some disruption this summer. And then also looking to make sure that we have somebody that can help us that we would hire in a contract basis to really keep the public and the businesses informed about the blow-by-blow of the project schedule, what the project is going to look like, sort of the details, the progress, those kind of things. So I think that'll be a good use of a portion of that money anyway this year to really help get us down the line on the Midland project. Let's see, I think that's sort of the main one I wanted to call out there, but all those numbers should be pretty current at this point. And let's see here. Oh, sorry, I skipped a page. Okay, thank you. So on this page, it just breaks out with a little more detail the taxes. So as I mentioned, we're around $1 million on the property tax. It's 1.2. General sales tax, you can see how we're bumping up. It'll be about $1 million over what we had budgeted this year. But again, we're tracking at a projection of 7.5. So we're looking at keeping that flat.
So this is like the total tax.
Yeah.
Net,
That's right.
Net of inflation is about 2% or something like that, maybe 4%.
No, it's a little high. Yeah, it's probably more like, I don't know, 7 the way that we're tracking. So it's been pretty good. So we are seeing real growth. And then I had mentioned before about the building permits. We will adjust this number when you look under licenses and permits. We've had, since I had a conversation with some of you, the 350,000 number that we budgeted this year will probably be a little closer to that for a budget number. We went back to the building official and had him just do some digging on sort of the one-off permits that we get, remodels, fence permits, permits for mechanical systems, things along those lines. So we'll probably jump that number up around $75,000 or so to be a little more accurate with what we expect to be coming in. And what we've said in the past is that 350 was kind of a baseline, and anything above that should really be like kind of one-time use, and that 350 as a baseline could be used for operations. But as you can see, this year we're going to be a little bit more cautious on that number, just with the amount of buildings that we've seen come out of the ground in the last year or so. And then the last thing I would point out on this page, which is really cool news, is about the pool. So the pool, we saw a lot of use at the pool. The revenue we saw jump up this year. People are getting annual passes. People are coming to check out the new pool, and we've had a lot of great feedback. We are looking at doing a couple small additions out there. We've had some requests for a swimsuit spinner in the bathrooms, an ice machine, and it seems that little snack shack does well. People enjoy it, and as Michelle pointed out, and I can attest to, ramen seems to be the best seller there for some reason. So buy stock in ramen, apparently.
That was $1 million, is that correct, this summer, the revenue?
Yeah, not quite, but. And let's see, I kind of pointed out to you, if you go down toward the bottom, yeah, right there, Jenny, is good. On the total unrestricted revenues, you can see that, this year we had that 11.4, and we're looking to program less, and that really is a function of the COPs that we took last year for the police land. And I think I kind of went over most of the details on the restricted that I wanted to. So Jenny, you can go down there, and feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast. Let's go to the legislative budget. We'll just touch on that. After these summary pages, we get into each of the detailed budgets for departments. The legislative budget is where we like to, that's kind of the council's budget, if you will. And a few years ago, we called out a few different important focus areas, which included the green team funding and the total arts funding. So one of the cool things, 5 years ago when I got here, I remember Auden saying that he wanted to spend $100,000 a year on renewable projects, green things, and now we're nearly up to $1 million. Some of that is reflective of some new programs we put into place, like the shuttle, the Basalt Connect, which is getting people out of their cars and offering rides through in a more transit-oriented fashion. We've got the bike share program that is stabilizing and look like it's coming under RAFTA. But that nonetheless is in there. And then some of these other programs we talked about earlier, like the e-bike support. We're helping to subsidize some of the efficiency improvements. We know that buildings, they've been identified as our biggest single source of greenhouse gas emissions. And so looking to get people to get more efficient fixtures and heating and those kind of things. And so partnering with CORE and Holy Cross on that. Composting is another one that we've programmed in there. So as a net, we're certainly seeing the council put their money where their mouth is and putting a lot more focus and emphasis on that. Then the arts, of course, was another one. I think in the last few years, we can safely say that we're seeing a lot more art get deployed into the community, both performance and physical art. BPAC has been great at, you know, kind of helping us usher that along and getting murals, doing the ice sculptures, and then of course some of our pieces of art. And look, get over the park here in the next year. So the next number of pages here are really all of those budgets. So feel free to, you know, look through those if you have questions. And then I'm going to fast forward to the CIP, and that'll kind of be the last thing that we cover here.
Page 88.
Thank you. So, you know, every year we update the capital improvements plan. It's a 5-year plan, so it allows us to kind of look ahead at, you know, projects that we want to prioritize. This is a summary sheet that we didn't have when we had shared some of these numbers with council earlier. But you can see, you know, we're looking at, you know, continuing on with our fleet rotation in 2023. We are, these next two that are in green are really reflective of the affordable housing and the green investment on solar, that $8 million number. The streets number is really reflective of Midland for the most part there. And then we get down into our water fund, which we're looking at programming about $500,000 in capital. Part of that is the water study that we're going to be doing. We've already gone through that procurement and have that company in place, and really that's to look at, you know, what is the infrastructure that's in need of replacement, when, and, you know, what do we need to be looking at as far as fees and things moving into the future to make sure it's a sustainable fund for us. And then as we discussed briefly there, we've got our parks, open space, and trails. We can go through some of that. But the total sources, or the total capital expenditure is just shy of $26 million. That's what's programmed into this next year. Some of that will be dictated by timing of the projects and such, but nonetheless, that's what we would have available to us. Jenny, if you'll go to the next page, so I think we'll go through. You can skip the fleet for now. Under the facilities, there we go. Calling out some improvements here at Town Hall. Again, knowing that we will be staying in this town hall for a little bit, investing into this building, looking at some efficiency improvements, and maybe just some others to make sure that we're all, you know, keeping the building up so that it serves us well for another handful of years. You can see the first full payment of the certificates of participation for the police department at $466,000. So we did a quick burn on that. We're going to pay those off in a short number of years, but we've got to make those payments nonetheless in the interim. And I mentioned the cemetery already, and also down in there you can see the bike share, sort of where we landed on that. And had brought an MOU to the council about a month ago, where we had sort of enumerated where we would be, what our expectation for contribution would be to keep the bike share going. Let's see, under streets, there you are on streets, there you go. We got the money programmed in for the Basalt River Park restroom and bus stop. That's a portion of it. Our streets maintenance for next year at $350. I always like to ring the bell, making sure that we're keeping up on our assets and maintaining them to a high level. It really does end up paying for itself in the long run. It's much more expensive to do a complete reclamation and rebuild of a street section than it is to keep up with maintenance. You really get more life out of the street when we do that. We've done a great job. Public Works does a great job on Let's see, a couple other things of note here. We could go to post next. For 2023, we have programmed in there improvements to Albany Park. We'll be looking, we saw from Michelle's presentation earlier, looking at that playground equipment that's rather old in there. You know, probably we wouldn't pay for it out of here, but we've got bathroom improvements in that park, turf improvements, a second shelter programmed in there. That first shelter gets used quite a bit. Just below that, you can see we also have those certificates of participation out of this fund. So it's not a general fund expenditure, it's a post expenditure, but those were for the improvements at the pool. So we'll be paying those off. I think it was a 10-year payback on those, so we're obligated with that. One of the things we had in there, I just circled, I think it was on this bike amenity improvements. There's $35,000, but it's in there in a few places for doing wayfinding. So we have it from tonight, but just, you know, I guess you can just see when in the summer people are confused, standing in a corner, sitting on their bikes, trying to figure out where the Rio Grande Trail is. So making some improvements on wayfinding has been on our list, and we look to get to that this year. The Midland Avenue Skateboard Park, as was mentioned, and that's in definite need of repair after what I saw today. Two other things then, we've got the water and irrigation improvements. So we have lots of parks. Some of our parks are, you know, getting to the 20-plus year point and starting to replace those irrigation systems that just aren't functioning or constantly giving us headaches as far as you know, breaks and things like that. We are starting this year on Linear Park. There's a section we're doing down on Linear Park as we speak, and then next year we'll prioritize those improvements in a different area. And then, as we just talked about, Bill, the 20% parks maintenance is about $635,000. That's not all that we spend on maintenance. We're pulling from other sources as well to be able to keep up with that. But as far as what our contribution from post would be next year, that 20% is that amount. Very important funding source for us. And then just briefly on the water, which is our last portion here. As I mentioned, that water master plan, or the infrastructure study, excuse me, is programmed in here. And then some smaller investments looking at doing the third pinion tank, which is up by the water plant. We just finished the first two, and those are exterior coating. They look great. And then the telemetry and SCADA, that's how Robbie, our water operator, is able to get alarms in the middle of the night and be able to either fix them from her phone or let her know she needs to come into the plant to deal with an issue. And with that, I think, in summary, that's where we are with the budget this next year. So, happy to take any questions and see if I can answer them or defer to Jenny.
These are nits, but you know, is there any chance of upgrading the quality of our water right on Luxinger Spring? I mean, we're junior to the Colorado Parks and Wildlife on that. I just wonder if there's any strategy, potential for striking a deal with CPW, buying out, maybe flipping them to a junior position and we a more senior position on that for potable water supply.
One of the issues with Luxinger is timing of the use of water, so they use it to irrigate their fields up in the in that land. So we basically get access to it in non-irrigation season. So, you know, I think they're so focused on wildlife at the moment up there that if, you know, it would take getting them another irrigation source, which is pretty far from our system up there. So that would be the only challenge. I don't know, Jeff, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but saying pretty
I mean,
please?
I guess I'd say I have to look into it some more, but I mean, if there's, yeah, I mean, how do you allow for DPW to continue with its needed uses and finding a source for them and then negotiating something for purchase? But just doing some sort of like selective subordination probably wouldn't fly, but I don't know, could be worth looking at.
The other problem is taking in, I mean, if you did anything officially, taking it into water, I don't know that they
So my
want
thought,
to.
my own thought on is that we have such high quality water from those springs, and they're primarily winter use. And then, so when we start pumping groundwater from our wells, then, you know, you can let Lexington go, which is probably pretty much what happens now anyway. I don't know, just a thought. But if, you know, maybe our right is clad for the winter season, I don't know how soon that is, whether that's subject to being called out or.
That's pretty senior, so.
Yeah, I don't recall our priority for that off, but.
That's a nice topic.
Irrigation season.
It's probably a good topic for the water master plan discussion.
Yeah, sure.
We get it, but that's a thought. One other nip, and Ryan and I talked about it from time to time, but this would be a footnote or something to maybe think about on the post side. I have had numerous contacts, and I have to say most of the folks that have talked to me about it are residents of River Oaks, but there's some consternation out there in Tear on our load out ramp and the use of our Willits Lane bike patches off and packed with mud and dirt and debris. And this bears fact checking, but basically assertion from the neighbors out there is that every other municipality in the valley charges a fee for commercial revenue companies to use their facilities. You know, we might want to make some kind of plan and then earmarking some funds to upkeep the Durox Park and all those, you know, riparian lands out there might be a good idea, so.
We absolutely think that's part of the Willits corridor planning.
Okay.
So that will be a topic of conversation during that, because you're right. And I think other communities do charge for, you know, use of the boat ramp. We know that that gets crowded at times during the summer. And the current boat ramp is a very short, steep mud sort of slide in the summer, so.
It is a little grating when you ride your bike on the raft out and you pull up on the bike, you know, they just tell you, well, just ride out in the street. No, that's really not the way this is supposed to work. You know, it's supposed to keep clear to allow bikers to come through, and they don't see it that way, so I don't know.
They don't see it that way with pedestrians.
Yeah. That's right.
No, it's a good suggestion.
Okay, enough on that. But, questions, Cal? How do you feel about a $40 million budget? That's fund balance, that's fund balance, capital, that's everything, so our, budget realistically is, what, 12 or 13?
Yeah, about, well, it's 11 in our general fund, that's our operating fund, yeah.
That's the one we can affect.
That's right.
Yeah. So.
Can we see at the November presentation a historical? You guys normally give us that. Like not the whole thing,
probably,
but just like the general expenditures, and it's really cool to see where we've
come. We'll go back as far as we can with the numbers, up to 10 years. If we can get 10, great.
Or even 5 to 8, it's amazing to see our tax revenue growing. That's what I'm trying to. It's right there.
$34.
So it's just on this cool trajectory to see.
Yeah, we'll work on that.
It's been an awesome. I mean, to see what has been done from when I started to now, it's just amazing.
Correlation is not causation.
I'm not saying I did it. I would say the former finance director as well. Chris brought us into this amazing structure. It's easy to understand, and I'm sure you can do that. It's just awesome to see it growing.
Trend is not fading.
When you put that against the work plan too, how much is happening in the town, how much benefit and value is being provided. It's really extraordinary. Thank you all for putting that there. The work plan's awesome.
Good.
Thank you guys for all your hard work on this.
Yeah, this is great, guys. It really is
Extremely
excellent. Easy to,
understand.
a lot of numbers, but it's pretty easy to follow.
Yeah.
And if you found any typos in the work plan, you probably already corrected it today, so sorry about that. Anyway, thanks everyone.
Yeah, and Doug, welcome. And,
Right.
We look forward to you producing these sales tax numbers as projected.
I just saw the deposit for this current month.
That's great. Okay, thanks you guys. So that's the first draft. Good work on that. So council actions, next order of business is item 7A. This is resolution number 57, series of 2022. Resolution of the Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a memorandum of understanding to form the Rockford Valley Wildfire Collaborative.
So I'll take this one.
This looks like one of the better ideas that I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it doesn't already exist, but you know.
Yeah, I'm sure Jeff will have a little something to say about the current form of the agreement. But I'll talk a little bit about where we are, where we came from. So I've been attending all of these meetings and being involved personally in them. So I have seen over the last year all the sausage being made, and it is really cool to see all of these different communities coming together for a common interest, and one that is obviously near and dear to our hearts here in Basalt. So a couple of the main talking points that we've turned out, just to remind people, is that obviously wildfires don't recognize our town boundaries. So we figured it high time to make sure we're looking, kind of panning up and looking at the landscape in generally the Roaring Fork drainage. It does go out into Colorado a bit, but kind of, more or less focuses on the Roaring Fork drainage. There are 18 local, county, and state federal agencies that are involved in it. So that doesn't include some of the stakeholders that have been coming as well, like the Sunlight Resort, Aspen Valley Land Trust, and Holy Cross Cattlemen's Association. So one of the things that we've done recently, the rubber sort of met the road where everybody started throwing in different ideas for projects. And it was actually really interesting to sit in the room with people that know fire science, that could make the suggestions, knowing where high fire danger is because of fuel loading, the types of fuels that exist in places, and general wind directions and things that could really bring some catastrophic to us. So prioritizing things like that, also utilizing some of the natural features, like figuring out, hey, this road exists here, let's make sure we're taking that, using that to our advantage as we are looking at doing some mitigation. And so far, what I didn't see were municipalities coming in and saying, oh, I want this one just kind of like protects this special neighborhood over here or something. It was really people kind of keeping that interested at looking at protecting, of course, your towns, and also critical infrastructure. That's another big piece to that. And so, that is being created now. The State Forest Service, I believe it's the State Forest Service, is compiling all of that, is going to create a map. So we'll know, and we'll be able to show you guys at some point in time here, where the priorities are. The other benefit of doing this is because we're putting ourselves together in a room and really doing it at the scale we are, a lot of funding is now starting to come down from the federal government, and we can start to tap into it. We've already received 2 grants that we've had an Eagle County employee write on our behalf, so we're starting to gain some momentum. We are looking at having sort of a handler hired for us, and that person currently, it looks like they'll be housed at the Aspen Institute. The reason for that is they have office space to do this, where they can sort of oversee and manage an employee like. They'll help us to coordinate, help us to grants, administer grants, things like that. County and Eagle County have been very generous so far and been kind of teeing this up. So it looks like in the near term we'll probably try to get somebody on board for a time sort of position. The way we ended up splitting up funding on it, as you saw in your packet, we're in for about $65, which is pretty cheap money, to leverage that for some of the amounts that are going to come available in the form of grants. And with that, that's in a nutshell. One of the problems when you have 18 different organizations doing this is you have 18 different attorneys looking at it and making comments on the MOU. So I really, they're really trying to press us to get this through. Jeff did take a look at it. There were really non-substantive comments. So what we would like to get council to do is adopt tonight and give us the leeway to make some of these minor tweaks. If there's anything substantive that comes out of it, we'll bring it back. But if it's just basic typos, you can probably see from Jeff's bits, and there's we'll delete this number. There was paragraph 2D, and there's written after D, so we don't need that. So just things along those lines. So anything else?
You covered most of it. I'd say that this MOU has a pretty neat touch compared to some of the other IGA, a bunch of jurisdictions that party to, like, Ryan, if I remember.
They use that as like a.
Forfeiting our sovereignty.
Yeah, right, and so, again, this one has a pretty light touch, I might expect too many substantive comments, but the resolution does have something for me to make and accept, something consistent with, what's in your packet. And, yeah, that's it.
Great. Well, I entertain a motion to approve resolution numbers 57 through 22.
Move the town council adopt resolution number 51 series of 2022.
Second.
It's been moved, seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, guys. That's a good thing to be doing. So, yeah, it seems like the 2018 fire bought us a 50-year insurance policy, but there are spots around here that didn't burn, are overage, and so the threat remains, and vigilance is up for sure.
Do you see local utilities contributing? I see it around the current corners. What do you think they'll pay in?
Probably, I mean, maybe, we'll see, but again, once you get into the, like the Forest Service is contributing, that would take an act of Congress to get them to sign on to the MOU, and, so we thought, yeah, let's be nimble, let's be quick on it, so that we can get going, and, we'll see, I mean, they obviously have vested interest with their power lines. So we'll keep in mind, bring it back to the group.
Great. At this point in the evening, our next item is executive session. I would entertain a motion for the council to enter.
Sorry to interrupt, if I may, I just.
Need all that for executive session.
No, I was just going to call brief comments before we had a motion to go into executive session. So, by the agenda item, there's a new lawsuit involving the town, contesting the town council's approval of the Basalt Center development application. This is a lawsuit brought by Ted Guy. He is the plaintiff. It names the town Basalt Center developer and the current property owner of parcel that is proposed to be developed all as defense. The complaint has one claim. It's a Rule 106 claim under the Rules of Civil Procedure, basically alleging that the town council's approval was an abuse of discretion. In other words, that it was very capricious. So, just wanted to say that's kind of what's going on, and then for our executive session, I'm going to discuss that with you all in more detail. There's not anticipated to be any action by the council after the executive session. Nothing that we would need to do in a public meeting. So just for anyone that's tuning in, following the executive session, the meeting is going to adjourn. And so that, and if anyone would like to make a motion to enter executive session.
Mayor, I move that the town council enter executive session for a conference with our for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal question in accordance with CRS 24-6.402, parentheses B, 4B, more specifically to discuss Rule 106 lawsuit 2022 CV 0300177 Guy versus Town of Basalt.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So we are in executive session. We have to ask everybody that does not have business.
Grassroots, good to go.
Doug, you can stay if you want. You're not.